was in the town hall, and part of the interview process was to go up to the barracks, and we wandered all the way round, and a funny little man took us all the way round. It might have been Tommy Haslam, I can't remember, but it was all covered in snow, and it was when there were 12 of us being interviewed, and we all wandered round. It looked quite grim and ghastly. Then we went back, and eventually, as I told her, on the next day I was appointed to the job. So I went back, and this funny little man was there, but he wouldn't let me in. He absolutely refused. Can I describe what it was like? It was awfully bleak and cold, and College Main had water running down the walls when I eventually got in. And all up the path, and where my house is, or where my house was, all around there were great lumps of concrete, enormous basements of huttons that had been there, you see. And what could one do with all this concrete? I mean, there's one of them left. If you look round, you'll see it. You can see it from the principal's house. And so I wrote round to the Royal Northumberland Fusiliers. John Darlington, who'd been the colonel there, was quite a friend. And he used to have the staff out. I must tell you all about the staff going out to these places. And he said, why don't you write? And they came over for their annual exercise and blew up these things. It only cost something like, I can't remember, £2,000, whereas to have them all removed would have cost £20,000 or £30,000. And I did, which will amuse you in the early days. I had to weld the staff together, so I thought I would expose them to unusual experiences. And as I knew quite a lot of people in the Rural Valley, I begged all these people to ask them to meals. So Roger Fulford and his wife Sybil asked them to dinner, as Harold and Lady Parkinson had them to lunch. And I can't remember who else.
At Roseland Castle.
Oh, I went up to Rose Castle to the Carlisle. And Nancy Darlington and John Darlington had them all out, and they used to give them a lovely meal, and this was quite an extension of everybody's experience, you see. And I think it did all these kind of experiences somehow weld us together. I remember in the early days, we came over to Burnley, and we had Holy Communion in Burnley Parish Church, and then we had lunch, I think, with the Bishop of Burnley. Then they came to have afternoon tea with my sister up the road, and then they came into this little cottage, and they looked at this, and then we went back and had some lunch. So this would give them food for thought, at least, wouldn't it?
Tell us about some of the other traditions that you set up.
I didn't start traditions, did I? I don't think so. Well, we all wore gowns for academic balls, and when the Queen Mother came and important people like that, the students used to wear grey gowns. The question was, I had to put people in touch with the best all the time, so I knew somebody who knew the Queen's milliner called Arga Tarrant. So I rushed off with Charles Carter. We met in the Athenaeum, the club in London, and Arga Tarrant came along, and I said, I want very wonderful designs. And Charles Carter said yes. He was always very quiet, and he said, well, I have red and grey, and I said, or the other way around, and I said, I have blue and grey. So there's still that link with the University of Lancaster, the grey. Do you see it?
I remember Princess Margaretta's visit.
Princess Margaret of Sweden was, we had a link with Sweden because Sweden spent more money per head of the population on education than any other country in Europe. And it also was the founder of the comprehensive school, really. And so I thought, well, it'd be interesting to have a link with Sweden. And we were having a new building up in the William Thompson Hall. So I wrote the Swedish embassy and said, I understand there's a Swedish princess who's married to an English businessman. And they wrote back and said her name is Mrs. Ambler, Margareta. Princess Margaret. They gave me her address, and I wrote off. And she said she was going to have a baby, but she'd come and do it, and she did. And she developed quite an affection for the college in her very quiet way. And she came 8 times, I think, at least. 7 or 8
Sure.
times. She really did help, and she actually spoke to her brother, the king, all about this. I think he put out a bill that it would be a good thing for anybody to help St Martin's College. Near Burnley, and the Honourable Rachel K. Shuttleworth was one of the aristocrats of this neighbourhood, and she was a great friend of mine, and she came over to see me quite often, you see. And she asked her nephew, Lord Shuttleworth, who's now dead, to come along to the college to see me. Well, he was terribly lame, and I got him in through the front door and into the college office, and when I was in the college office, Mr. Warren was there, busy doing his cyclist standing. So I tapped Mr. Warren on the shoulder and I said, "May I introduce you? This is Lord Shuttleworth." And he turned around and said, "Go on, I'm Gracie Fields." One of the others I remember was the Bishop of Blackburn and myself marching down in front of college men, and I saw a young man about this age who was dreadfully scruffy, and he had a filthy no tie or anything on, and I went up to him and I said, "What on earth are you doing dressed like that? Go straight back to your room and change." And he said, "I'm one of the plumbers." That's one memory I have. I've always had a passion for Barbara Hepworth's sculpture, and I knew the Scott family who lived near Windermere. And I was at Abbot Hall, which they bequeathed to Kendal, and I was talking to Peter Scott one day, and he got a new Barbara Hepworth, which is in the courtyard. It's a lovely thing. And I said, "Do you know, I could get a Barbara Hepworth for £3,000. He said, "If you could get a Barbara Hepworth for £3,000, I'll give you the £3,000. Well, I'd already had a student who lived near Barbara Hepworth, and I kept telling him for months, "Go and call on Dame Barbara and say, we want a statue for St Martin's, you see." And he'd done. And she'd said eventually, "You can have one for £3,000. So I said, "Yes, I can do that." So, of course, he took him completely by surprise. And then Ben Holgate, perhaps with the bursar, I don't know, you better ask Mr. Holgate about it. They all went down there, they picked it up and came back. And it had strings in it, and we had it outside, and they all used to perish, so we had to put it inside. Harry Harrison restrung it, rather like a tennis racket.
Were being told that their future was to be secured by them. Otherwise, they would be amalgamated with another institution at best and demolished at worst. And this was a period when many colleges, church colleges, went to the wall. And therefore, it was imperative that the courses that we were running were strengthened. We introduced things like adult education, a variety of initiatives such as that within the European dimension. And isn't it interesting the way in which that, and one congratulates David Peacock and Margaret Whiteside for the work there, that soon afterwards, of course, became a very real issue. In a way, this college joined the common market well in advance of the nation. When the B.Ed was still in its infancy, and it was a B.Ed, not a B.A. University validating bodies wouldn't allow a degree such as they gave, a B.A. or a B.Sc, to be awarded here. But when that first student, very early on, graduated with a B.Ed and went on to a higher degree, the B.Ed came of age. People have said to me, major distinctiveness in the northwest of Britain was our church foundation. And of course many courses came from that. We were, I think, very much among the first in the field with courses for school governors, in the field of in-service training, not just in teaching, but primarily in teaching. Again, we had to increase our capacity and our activity. There have been a number of initiatives that this college has been able to take ahead of the field. We weren't perhaps completely ahead of the field, but almost so with CYS. We were very fortunate in the start that we had in the early days. Nursing, of course, is the other obvious example of the way in which we were responding very rapidly to the move that came under the general title of Nursing 2000. You see, and for me, the success of an institution is that of its individuals. Both staff and students have made this place. And it is their stature, it is their determination, it is their hard work that's done it. Many of our most distinguished products are not in splendid posts, well, posts with splendid titles. They are doing superb work as class teachers, or they're doing superb work at the back of a community service station, hidden away perhaps, but doing superb work. And I hear of this, and I still hear of it, and I meet them. And this to me is wonderful. It's been a story from start to finish of people, students and staff, and friends of the college, who've served well and given great credit to the place.
First impressions of the college are inevitably those that come upon you when you arrive at the main entrance and drive up a really glorious drive with its sweep of parkland on either side and through the gates and into what is St Martin's campus. For me, study and higher education has to be fun. If it isn't fun, if it's not enjoyed, it isn't worth doing. And so my vision for St Martin's is somewhere where students will be able to achieve their potential and enjoy doing it. Along with most other institutions of higher education in the country, there have been very significant developments over the last 5 years. And these can be categorized under the headings of growth in general, of students, and of staff. Now, in terms of growth in general, one thinks of the academic side and how the college has grown there, particularly in terms of its diversification. We were originally a teacher training college. During the 70s, the college diversified into combined studies. And in the last 5 years, that diversification has progressed with considerable speed. Youth and community studies has become one of our main areas of work, and we have recently gone into the fields of health and nursing and paramedical studies. Of particular note, since St Martin's is a church college, has been our increasing work with the church and with the diocese. Two of our most recent innovations have been degrees in religious studies and in Christian ministry. And I regard it as very important that St Martin's as a church college should be addressing issues concerning the church today. We've also diversified into the fields of performing arts and into sports science. When I arrived at St Martin's, there were somewhere in the region of 80 members on the full-time establishment. I have been responsible for the appointment of nearly as many staff again in the last 5 years, and this enormous growth has added to the diversity and richness of the staff common room, of the courses that we offer, and of course to the student experience. We have not only been growing in Lancaster, but we have established outposts in Blackburn and Carlisle. Both of these, but particularly Carlisle, are scheduled to grow in the coming years. 5 years ago, the full-time complement of St Martin's was below 1,300 full-time students. Today it stands at over 2,500 full-time students, with almost as many part-time students. Now, that growth cannot be accomplished without a certain amount of pain and a great deal of change. And part of my task and that of my colleagues is to accommodate that change so that it is as painless as possible and as creative as possible. I want to continue to lead a college which is a united and happy institution, and I want people to be able to say, not only thank God it's Friday, but after the weekend to be able to wake up and say, oh good, it's Monday.
Goal of knowledge, and our leader down paths of discovery and learning. May the wisdom of your Spirit be with all whose calling is to teach in this place. Give them insight into the needs and aspirations of their students, the humility to go on learning even while they teach, the wisdom to discern what is best in the old and the new, and above all, that grace and beauty of life without which knowledge is vain, for Jesus Christ our Lord.